This is a tutorial on how to use your phone, Luma AI, and Unity to create a Gaussian splat in order to mock up an immersive installation. What I am demonstrating here are some of the best practices when recording video for Gaussian splatting. The video on the left demonstrates how to move your body, keeping things steady, using both arms for stabilizing the camera or stabilizing the body. And the video on the right demonstrates the point of view of the camera to give a better sense of how the footage should look, how it should sweep over the area you are attempting to scan. Remember to move slowly to mitigate motion blur. If you can use a higher frames per second, that may also help. Do multiple spins, each with your phone at a different height, then repeating the process in multiple locations within your scanning space. Moving around 3D objects and recording all of their sides will ensure that you get more dimensionality within your scan, and you will get more coverage and a more realistic looking output. In an interior space, be sure to do a sweep of the ceiling and floor, making sure not to get your legs in the shot. Any surface that is a solid color, like my white or green wall, try and keep other elements in frame, so try and get some of the ceiling or some of the floor. This will allow tracking to be more successful. The longer the video you make, the longer it will take Luma AI to process, and the more error-prone it might be. So keeping your videos to 1 or 2 minutes is a good idea, at least for small and medium-sized spaces. You can always clean up and recombine multiple scans virtually after the fact. Once your video is done recording, you can download the Luma AI app from your respective app store and begin the Gaussian splatting process. So first, open up your Luma AI phone app. At the bottom of the app, there is a purple plus sign that you can tap, and that may prompt you to give permission to access your photo album. Once you do, it will pull up your photo album, and you can select the video that you want to use as your scan. It will prepare the video. I think it's breaking it down into frames that can then be used for training. And once it's done, there's a menu with options. I'm just using privately share, and I'm not adding a location. You can select the upload button, and that will upload your video and start to process it. The longer the video, the longer it will take to process, and also the more likely it is to mess up. So if you keep getting error messages and it says it can't process it, you may want to take shorter videos, or make sure you're not moving too fast, or make sure there's more control over the light, that it's not fluctuating too much. And you can always take a existing longer video and edit it down in your video editor on your phone. Once your splat is done processing, you can view it directly on the phone app, or even better, you can go to lumalabs.ai/dashboard/captures, and it will pull up any capture that you've created after you log on. And so here is my capture. After several not so successful attempts, I was able to get a decent capture of my office. And so I'm just going to go up here to the upper right corner and hit the download button. And this gives you different options. So if you want a mesh to work with, you can choose one of these under Object. Though in my experience, sometimes the mesh comes out looking very glitchy and melty. There's point cloud format and also 360 image format. But what we want is the Gaussian splat, so I'm just going to click on that and download it. And once that's downloaded, we're going to open it up in Unity through an existing example that allows you to use Gaussian splats in Unity. First, go to the GitHub URL we have provided. That will take you to this Unity Gaussian splatting project. And you can come over here and copy this if you have Git installed and can run it on your command line. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go to download zip for those who might not have Git installed. It's going to download the zip. I'll extract it. And then I'll go over to Unity Hub and open up that folder. And inside this folder, you want to go to the projects folder. And we're just going to open the basic one. There's an HDRP and a URP, but we'll just do the generic. And I'll open that. You will likely be prompted to install the correct version, which I am going to do. Otherwise, I might run into some issues. And if you've never had to install other versions like this, you can go to the install editor, click on the archive, and then go to the download archive. And I copied that Unity editor number. It's right here at the top, 2022.3.47 F1. So I'll go ahead and download that. Clicking that will open up the install in our Unity hub and then prompt me. We don't need any other platforms, so I'm just going to hit continue and agree, and that install has started. Once the correct editor version is installed, we can open up the Unity file we downloaded, and in the assets folder there is this GS test scene, Gaussian Splat test scene. And so we're not going to see anything initially other than your main light and main camera and this Gaussian Splats object. So what we need to do in order to use our file is to convert it to be usable in Unity. So if you go up to this Tools menu at the top, there is an option for Gaussian Splats. Now this is specific to this example project. So if you wanted to use this in another project, you would have to install this project as a package to allow access to this extra tools menu. Follow the arrow over to create Gaussian Splat asset. I can now convert my download. And so I'll click on this folder and find that download. I need to extract it first. It comes downloaded as a zip file. Open that up. And you've got a few options here. I'm going to uncheck import cameras. I don't need the cameras in this situation. It might render these extra objects that are just going to clutter things up, so I'm going to uncheck that. You can change the quality, but for this project, we are just trying to make a sketch here, so I'm just going to go with medium quality. That'll make things a little faster. And then I say create asset, and it is going to take that file and make it usable within this game object. And so you'll notice now that I have this file with sort of this cube and brackets icon, and I can click on my Gaussian Splats object and drag that over, and that is going to set my splat as an object that I can now view in Unity. So this is basically like a point cloud, but rather than just single squares, it has these blurry, stretched out ovals all throughout the space, which blend together depending on the camera angle and create the appearance of a 3D scene. As you can see, it's not perfect, but it's a fairly decent render given it's just from a 2-minute video through Luma's app. If I were to take a longer video that's higher quality and then run it through the original Gaussian Splatting desktop program, it would come out a lot better. But the convenience of Luma makes it great for mocking up designs for spaces that you might want to install projections, VR, AR, whatever immersive experience in. So with Gaussian Splats, you end up inevitably with some floating artifacts that kind of get in the way and become kind of a nuisance in our scene. So one way we can mitigate this that's kind of hacky but useful beyond just Gaussian Splats is to look at our camera settings up here. And if I click on the drop-down menu by that camera icon and uncheck dynamic clipping, I can access the clipping planes of our scene view camera. So if I change the near clipping plane, the farther I go, it's going to eliminate the objects that are closer to our virtual eye, our virtual camera. So if I move this up, you're going to start to see objects closer to the camera disappear. So we're telling it, if you are within 7.5 units here of my camera, then just make that stuff invisible. It also works with the far clipping plane, which is set to be very far, but if I were to bring this all the way back down below, say 100, it's going to start eliminating things that are more than 100 units away or more than 15 units away. But I'm going to reset that because I actually do want to see far, and I'll keep that near clipping plane at 7.5 because that seems fairly comfortable, though you'll notice around the edges, maybe I'll set that a little lower. Let's try 5 so that things aren't unnaturally disappearing. But this just allows us to have a nicer view here without so many splats getting in the way. In addition to that, a nice little tip is to hold down your right mouse button. And if you use the WASD keys, you can move around your scene and rotate the mouse as you go. And it allows you to really navigate a lot more quickly around your scene. Finally, if you hit the F key while not holding any mouse buttons, that is going to put whatever object you have selected in focus. And so you can see with this Gaussian splat, you've actually got a spherical skybox around it. And with the F key, it's really just going to zoom out to keep all of that object in focus. But it's a nice way to kind of jump out or bring whatever object you're trying to deal with in focus without other objects getting in the way. And so I'll zoom back in. So now if I want to edit that splat, so I'm not dealing with all these artifacts in my face, I can click on Edit here with the Gaussian splat object selected. And it's just a simple draggable box process. So if you just hold the left mouse button and drag, you're going to select these splats sort of directly in your line of sight. And obviously you might select some that you don't want to have selected. So if you hold Control and drag, it will remove the selection. And if you hit Shift, it can add to the selection if you're trying to select more. And so I, for example, have all these over here that don't really do anything for me. So I'm just going to select those and hit delete, and then it just makes a hole right there. But now I'm not going to have all of this stuff I don't want. And so if I just eliminate everything over here, then I've got a nice little set to work from. And it's almost like I'm looking at a stage, which I can use to mock things up. So I'll go ahead and remove some more unnecessary splats. So you'll notice with splats, if you don't get a nice three-dimensional view, meaning you didn't move around the objects enough, seeing their tops and bottoms, you're going to get these views where things do line up, but once you shift over, they're going to start to break. And that just means you didn't brush over those areas well enough in 3 dimensions. You probably only had one particular view. And so just to make things faster, I think I'm just going to kind of eliminate this whole area on my stage. I think I got to hit edit again. And I'm just going to cut out this whole half of the sphere. And so now I've got this nice little stage that I can set virtual objects in. So if I were to use this as a nice little 3D model to mock things up, I can start loading in more objects. So now I got a nice little virtual cube that I can place over top of my chair here. Maybe I want a sphere too. Put that on the desk. And so obviously we're using primitives here, but if you were to have a 3D model, you could kind of see how it's going to look when rendered in this little 3D set we've created. And so with that, I can bring the clipping plane back down since I don't have as many artifacts floating around me. And now I can see how things look in 3D space. So again, this is really just for a mockup, but it's a great way to get a sense of how AR objects might look in a physical space, how it could give you a fast way to mock up a VR scene that you then go and remodel in a 3D modeling software, or maybe you make better scans or even a better splat for a very convincing look in VR. You could also mock up a room-wide installation. So if you wanted to place projectors and projection screens throughout a room, you could figure out how they will work spatially, get a sense for how a person might fit within that room, what scale will look like. This could even be used with virtual production. If you are shooting a film, you could Gaussian splat the space and then figure out your camera tracks, how cameras need to move through the space, and create some splines to make a virtual camera move through. And then when you're ready to actually film, you'll know kind of the pace you want to go. Shout out to this GitHub user who has provided the means to edit and load Gaussian splats, Aras Prankevikios, or RSP on GitHub. And with that, this has been a very brief tutorial on how to use Gaussian splats very quickly and easily in Unity.